Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions, or if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End and wish to support us, the best thing you can do is to share it on your social media. But also, you can tell your mother, sister, cousin, auntie, the kid that's walking by you down the street, your gym crush, anybody about the episode you're listening to and why you liked it. There's also another way to support us, and it's to go to the link posted in the description and on our Facebook page. And when you become a subscriber, you'll have access to subscriber-only content and ad-free listening for every single episode we put out. No matter what you choose to do, I do greatly appreciate you for tapping in, and please do reach out to our Facebook page so we can chat. Tell us what you feel, what you think, what you don't like, what I could improve upon. At the end of the day, this is meant to be a conversation starter. And just to be completely open and honest, every single penny that goes to the Off the Deep End program with subscribers is going to help other people by spreading the word via ads or getting new microphones so we can have more people at a time. And I really do appreciate every single listener. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great day, and don't pass the pain. Hey everybody, welcome back to Off the Deep End Podcast. I'm your host, Eddie. As always, I'm sitting here with a absolutely lovely and special guest, a mother, a American, a fierce friend, and someone who friendship has transcended generations in my family, Miss Amy. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and an honor to be invited onto the podcast. It's definitely doing great things. So
I hope so. I get a lot of feedback about it, and not all of it's good. I get a lot of people that are really frustrated and talking shit back, and
really,
yeah, a lot of people saying that I've been called a misogynist. I don't do massage therapy, so I don't know what that's about. They said I'm underqualified to do these talks, but at the end of the day, not talking about things we go through in life doesn't really help anybody.
No, I don't think there's a certain level of qualification that you need to have to talk about life topics in general. It's a little ridiculous. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
So why don't you give me a breakdown of your childhood? What was it like for young Amy walking around with an AR-15 on her shoulder at 4 years old? No, I'm joking.
At 4 years old, that would be a little terrifying, really.
Absolutely terrifying.
But I was raised in Cleveland, Washington, right here, and good old state of Washington, and I had a lot of time that I just spent out in the woods hanging out, and a little bit of supervision, but not a whole lot, because I had a family of there was 5 kids, and my mom, being a single mother, had, that's a bit of a handful to keep track of everybody, and she would work her butt off to try to take care of us. So that's I was going to school there in Cleveland and had a lot of negative things, a lot of bullying, but I would say more like cliques and people just being very judgmental of other people. And
in what ways? Because in my experience working with or being around cliques and stuff, there was like the nerds, there was country people, there was the people who were living in the city of slickers, there was the fake gangsters, there was the real gangsters, there were the preps, there was the goth people, you know what? And I didn't really like the whole idea of being put in a box and categorized. I try to be friends with everybody.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of where I was at with it. But as far as like the cliques went there, there was like the preps and so does prep cover, is that like jocks too?
Jock, the preppy, okay. people who are what do they call it? If you have a clean cut haircut, if you have, usually both parents are present in your life, you're involved in sports and activities, you're school oriented, you're a fully functioning member of that little child community that they call school.
Right. And Cle Elum definitely being a smaller community, there was a lot of pressure on, like, if you didn't do certain things, then you didn't really fit into a lot of those areas. So, and like you said, there was also like the country clique, because there's a lot of farmland out there and stuff. But then they kind of overlapped at the same time and stuff. But I just didn't have a lot of fun in school, because school in general is, you read these books, you do all these lessons, and I really didn't like traditional schooling. I didn't thrive in a lot, and I don't like to be forced to read certain things at certain times. I don't feel like that is the way that you should be educated, because everybody's different. So why should one base of education fit every single member of society? So
I definitely had to struggle with that as well. I remember the reading list was like Diary of Huck Finn.
Yep.
So I'm sitting here in class, being one of the only black kids in my class, and one of my teachers keeps asking me how I feel about the word nigger being used like a million times in this thing.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of weird.
Well, and then you're singled out.
Them trying to gain perspective from somebody who's experienced that. So I had to learn how to cope with being in a city school of predominantly white people, and being only a couple of black people. They used me as that kind of token perspective, and some teachers were doing it. Yeah. And I don't think it was from a malicious way, but ultimately it just shows how unintegrated the school I was at is. And that same thing can be said about people who don't have parents. Like I sat in classes, and people and the teachers would say sometimes, well, what would your mother say about this? And I remember one of the kids saying, my mom got shot 3 years ago.
Wow.
And so you can't expect someone to have the same perspective as you, right?
Right.
So
we're definitely all different. Like,
yeah, we're all different. So, but that was it was wild to me, the differences and the socioeconomic breakdown of the schools. And you need to read this book at this time. Yeah. I was dyslexic as hell. I'm trying to read big words and I have to read everything twice on a page. So
you can't keep up with the pace of the class.
No.
That's very relatable.
I didn't learn that way, and I don't need the cookie cutter A plus B equals C.
Yeah.
That's not going to help me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just need to look at the problem, and I can solve most math problems in my head without even using a calculator.
And that's unacceptable in a public school setting, because they want to see exactly how you did it and how you broke it down. And therefore, if you didn't break it down to solve the problem, you cannot give them what they're asking for.
And you don't get.
And then they're like, "Well, you cheated."
They told me that too a lot of times, and I said, it is true. And I said this in front of the whole class. I got kicked out one day because I said, it is easy as hell. All I got to do is look up the plain old problem and the number, the 5 tag 15 lesson number on the computer when I go home, and I can find the answers. But I don't do that. I can just solve this because it's simple.
Right.
It's easy for me, and it might not work for other kids, and that's okay. Yeah. But don't judge me because I can solve math.
Right, because you can solve math.
It's not your plan.
That's not one of my specialty areas. I definitely did not do a lot of math solving.
Hey,
and it wasn't until I was in high school that a lot of math actually started making sense to me. So it's really interesting how, and that's another thing, like everybody's brains develop at different levels, at different paces. So you cannot put a giant round ball in a tiny little box and have that work out. It's just not gonna work.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So, but so I did eventually move from Cle Elum and went to live in Gold Bar with my dad for a while, and went to Sultan High School, which was a whole nother hot mess of a school there. They have the lowest graduation rate in the state. I'm not sure if they still do, but back then they definitely did. And I made a lot of really questionable choices, because at that point in my life, I was 14, 15 years old, 2001. So, but lived with my dad in Gold Bar. Like I said, Sultan was an interesting school, but that's where I ended up meeting my husband.
I like him. He's great.
We met in a trailer park there. So we like to country up our marital story, I guess. There, it's funny because our dads lived next to each other, and I had heard of him but didn't really like know who he was. And his dad is kind of a boisterous guy, so
Oh
I
yes.
already had like this idea in my mind of what Brian might be like, you know. So when I actually met him and saw him, I was like, oh, good gracious. Like, I actually was not like very thrilled with him at that
Oh,
point.
it wasn't love at
It
first
was,
sight. Oh
it wasn't a
man,
love
I
at
was
first
waiting.
sight.
I was waiting for the fireworks lit off in the background. He shook his giant bearded H15, a 6'7", 250-pound piece of muscle. No, that's not the case.
No,
Oh.
no, because he had come over to visit and he was with a friend, so he was, you know how guys are when they get together, it's like macho as macho, and I wasn't impressed with that kind of thing back then. So I was just like, oh, wonderful, and went hung out with a good friend, and then he just never went back home. Like he did, but then he came back, right? And he just hung out, and I got to know him a bit better, and then that's when I was like, okay, I think I really like this man.
Mm-hmm.
So
was he? What stood out the most to you about him, other than the fact that he was very boisterous?
he's a very honest guy, and he's very kind. So, and you know, I just it's very good qualities to find in a guy, and he's still that. So good for him, because
Yeah.
people change, right?
Oh God,
And he
people do.
didn't, you know. And we got to grow up together and learn how life works and how relationships work. And you know, we made a lot of mistakes together, and we had a lot of growth together. And then we, you know, had family. And well, we moved from Gold Bar to California and lived there for a couple of years. And
So what was that like, going from a crazy, always rainy in the winter time, um, tree filled area
yeah,
to go into a place like that?
definitely culture shock. Not a, well, I guess that would be like climate shock, right?
Yeah.
Like climate and culture all at once. It was definitely interesting. And we moved down there in June, which would not be ideal if you choose to move to Bakersfield, California in the middle of the spring. That's not a good time because it gets hot down there. So it's like 100 degrees, and up here in June it's like 65. So
Yeah, it's like perfect. I love June so much. I was obviously born in June, but June is like the perfect northwest temperature. You can do anything. You can go in the mountains and run on the grassy hills that they use for snowboarding in the winter.
yeah,
You could go on hikes. The water is just warm enough to go swimming and stuff like that. California in June, if you haven't been there before in June, it's something else.
it is definitely something else. It was definitely an experience. So we lived down there for close to 2 years. Um, ended up, I was 17, ended up moving in with Brian at that time because my dad ended up moving back up here, and I wanted to stay down there. And at that point, I was actually doing reasonably well in school. I'd found some programs in Bakersfield that were really good for alternative schooling.
Okay.
So it was a lot of fun. That was a really good experience. And the way that they did it was we'd go to school in the evening. So we'd have to show up there at like 3 p.m. and then we would get out 7, 8 o'clock, right? So in California, that is ideal because then you're in air conditioning until it starts cooling off, right? So but the way that they did their program was they had just kind of random teachers that had volunteered to help these quote lost students find their way again. And so they would teach even outside of the subject that they specialized in, which was really interesting. But it worked. It really did. It worked. I had a science teacher that actually was able to start teaching me math because for whatever reason I couldn't understand fractions like at all. And he was like, no, look, and he broke it down in a way that I was like, how did I not understand this? I don't understand how I didn't understand.
Did your previous teachers not take the time to break things down for you when you had questions?
Well, they did, but the way that they tried to explain it did not compute.
It was just the cookie cutter, show your work, long
Right.
division type stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't benefit from that at all. I needed different comparisons. I needed it to be, a lot of times that I've noticed, with especially with the newer generations, that children need things broken down in a way that fits their interests. So for Jackson, for example, I say, all right, so I usually use money with him. Money works great because he wants to have money one day and take care of his mom, which is an admirable thing for a young man to say at age of like 10 at the time. So, but for me, I needed things that are different. I need you to break down military troop divisions. I need companies. I need you to explain how many regiments I'm working with here as far as fractions. So I said, okay, you got one man. You're rolling with one man over here. That's 1 out of 1. It's all he needs to work. He's got a rocket launcher. He doesn't need like 5 rocket launchers with him because it's gonna be a lot of boom boom in one spot. So you gotta spread it out, and that's how fractions really helped me. We used the game Halo. We used a lot of times we use pennies.
Oh yeah.
And use them as math because for math because it would make more sense to me. You know, the different colors, different shapes. It all things started clicking, and then once I had that visual, the rest of it just clicked.
The visual aspect is huge. And what just popped into my mind was I've seen people use Legos.
Mm-hmm.
So a Lego is 4, right?
Yeah.
And then so if you break it down into 4 littler Legos, it shows that you can, turn a hole into $1, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Take your 4 quarters and you've got your hole there. So but money math, and like if you can use little tools like Legos or pool noodles, like think outside of the house, right? Go outside, use your environment to help teach your children. It's really basic concepts that a lot of people, I don't think, because everybody wants the schoolhouse foundation for education.
A lot of people just want it as pretty much a state babysitter.
Well, that too. Right. But as far as the educational system is concerned, it's testing, educating, testing, educating, testing, educating, testing, educating. A lot of kids don't thrive on that at all. And I know a lot of teachers work really hard to make things fun for kids, to put their lesson plan out there in a way that can keep the kids in tune. But like myself, and you said you're dyslexic. Mm-hmm. So I'm dyslexic. My husband is also dyslexic. So there's actually generational dyslexia. So a lot of the time, if you take a child with dyslexia, I completely lost my train. I have no idea what I was saying.
If you have I think I understand what you're trying to say, that if one person has dyslexia, the next person has dyslexia. It's just going to keep on continuing down the line.
For sure.
Especially if it goes unsupported. For me, I understand that I do have dyslexia, so I try to teach things in a way that I don't understand. And it might click for them.
That's where I was going. Go ahead and try to test a child with dyslexia.
Oh, it's not fun.
And the results that you're going to get from that test are not going to be relevant to that student, because I guarantee you, if you take that same test and you deliver it to them in a way where they don't think that they're being tested, then they're going to give you way better results. 100% better results.
Did they do that at that school in California with you?
No, they didn't. No, but there was like minimal testing that went on with that school. It was like,
it wasn't like a test score school.
No,
because I noticed that test score schools, you can't, and you said it best. You really can't take one word or a circle, a large circle, and put it into a square box. You can't categorize everybody into the same slot because we're all different. Everybody is different. Everybody is different. And that's how I explain it when I'm talking about fitness and stuff. But it's really, really ridiculous to think that every child is going to benefit from the same things.
Yeah.
Children have different dreams. Some might want to be a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
Others might not want to be a rocket. I don't want to be a rocket scientist.
That's way too much math. I would not thrive at being a rocket scientist.
No. I mean, if and some people wouldn't. Some people don't make good police officers. Some people don't make good people in the military. There's not everybody is going to be the same.
Yeah.
And if we expect everybody to work a 9 to 5, put together PowerPoints and be able to publicly speak, it's unrealistic, and it's foul. It's completely
foul. It really is.
I think our education system is outdated in so many ways, but I know a lot of great teachers who are doing things separate from that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and a lot of them do things from home, even.
Yeah, and I know a lot of teachers take money out of their own pocket, which they don't even get paid, like, to be able to invest in your own classroom, and then you're getting paid pennies is, it's very honorable. Mm-hmm. Like, I have no hate against teachers at all. They really put themselves out there for kids, and then there are some that don't. Like, there's, just like you said, a little bit of everything. Everybody is different. All teachers are different. The way that they apply their material to the students and the way that they perceive their students is very different. So
mm-hmm. I had a lot of issues with teachers growing up because a lot of them didn't care. A lot of them just didn't care. And to be a teacher, you spend a lot of time with children over the course of the year. If you don't care, they're going to start to not care too.
Right.
It's so important to invest emotionally in your children in your class. We hear these stories about active shooters and teachers dying to try to protect the students. That's not necessarily what I'm trying to get around to as far as being emotionally invested in the kids, but that's amazing as well.
Absolutely.
And also, when they just sit down and take a little bit extra time for the kid that doesn't understand, after they finish with their cookie cutter part of the lesson, mm-hmm. they say, okay, all right, you guys get started on this, and they go over the person who had a weird expression of confusion on their face the whole time,
right?
Which was me usually, and they take the time to help me. Mr. Heberline was great, because he understood that I didn't do too well with the normal schooling, so he let me flourish. When it was time to do work about the Dracula, the Dracula book, I didn't perceive Dracula the way they perceived him. I perceived him as a dark entity that looked for selfish expression, and so I chose a song by Lupe Fiasco called "Put You on Game" that has to deal with the same type of toxic, dark ideology that supported it, and I used that as my comparison, and I played it for the class, and everyone else's was all like funky, creepy Halloween music, and mine was actually there's a lesson behind it, and I explained why, and I got an A+.
Well, and see, that's the perspective. Mm-hmm. You had a completely different perspective when the rest of the class saw it in one light, which that's very valuable in society, to have that one person that sees it in a way that nobody else does. That's very valuable. Definitely. 100% valuable.
I definitely agree. And of course, the song was super, super vulgar. There was a lot of it's a great song, but it was super inappropriate, and it was super dark. Talking about crack houses, putting drugs into fiends' arms, and corrupting our societies. So I really loved playing it and seeing the expression on all these kids' face when they realize that outside of this perfect life they live, or maybe not so perfect, I'm not here to judge, but outside of their life, they're seeing a different perspective. Perspective is so important.
It is, absolutely.
So what was the major takeaway from being down in California with these teachers that helped you get to the point where school wasn't as really difficult, other than the science teacher being a great math teacher?
Right. So I guess just the fact alone that all of these teachers took time out of because they're already busy. They were already teaching full classes during the regular school hours, and then they would apply their time to the kids that needed a little extra. So that in itself, I think, was absolutely amazing to me. And then just I was at that turning point in my life where I realized, okay, I really, really need to actually graduate high school, because I started my junior year with only 4.5 credits. And in Washington State at that time, we needed between 20 and 22, which I believe is what it still is now. But just kind of depends on which school you're in, how many credits you need to earn in order to graduate and all of that. But I was able to earn all of the credits that I needed to graduate at that time, but I ended up graduating here actually from Mount Lake Terrace High School because life happened and we ended up having to move. I don't remember. My husband was here. He could tell you the year, the month, all of that. Amy, she can do that for you.
Hey, it's okay.
So it was, I want to say it was like in the middle of the school year during a break, though. We were able to move up here, and then explaining to Mount Lake Terrace High School the way that, because California, instead of 22 credits, they want 220 credits. So that's like moving the decimal, right? Mm-hmm. I had to explain everything to the counselor, like, you just need to move the decimal point. She could not understand. So I was like, okay, I've got all of these classes here. I earned all of these credits. So let's just move the decimal point, lady. And like I said, I'm really bad at math. So the fact that I had to explain all of that to her was kind of alarming to me.
Okay.
But yeah.
So. I mean, a lot of the counselors up here, they look at things differently too. I had great counselors in high school because for a multitude of reasons, but I had one that I had to check in with every week because I was starting to have some violent tendencies, especially in my junior, senior year. I had never been caught doing the violent tendencies, but I got, there was like obviously people in high school talk the gossip, right? They tell, oh man, blah, blah. And when you're finding kids bleeding in bathrooms, like unconscious, like names spread.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time with a counselor to talk about why, just talk about violence and talk about healing, talk about not expressing your things in frustration. I started vocalizing it instead, which is a lot better.
Yeah.
Thankfully for them. And then I had to see, but I was with Mr. Miranda. He was like a disciplinary guy. He was in charge of discipline in the school. So me and him became really, really good friends ultimately, because I'll just be honest with him. I'm like, listen, man, I'm not going to let someone talk shit to me. I'm already 18. Right. If someone is going to push me, I'm going to do whatever I think I need to do to protect myself. I'm not going to get bullied anymore. Are you going to get bullied, Mr. Miranda? And he said, no, I'm not going to get bullied. I said, well, me either. I'm happy. Right. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it led to having a good relationship. But him taking the time out of and it would be, he'd pull me out of classes, check on me, and stuff like that. That made the ultimate amount of difference.
He would kept me in school. You out to check on you. Absolutely. That's good stuff right there.
And I thought everyone thought I was always in trouble going to Mr. Miranda's office. I'm like, I'm going to have a fun talk.
Right.
And then sometimes I was in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, he invested time in you and was able to help guide you. And that's absolutely good stuff.
Yeah. And it's super important to have your counselors invest in the students in the school.
Yeah.
Because it can prevent a lot of horrible things. I've been saved from a lot of things, a lot of different things that I was going through at the time, between being between houses and not having a great relationship with my parents at the time. So it was very helpful. And I was also in a violent home. So domestic violence was directly impacting me every single day. And I'd go to school and I think that violence is a solution to things because
you feel anger and you don't know what to do with the anger because you were not taught how to express it in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm. Right? And it wasn't like me being like a bully though.
No,
but it was just boiling over.
Undealt with anger is and I think anger is probably the hardest emotion to wrangle and keep control of.
It definitely.
For a lot of people anyway. I guess I can't speak for everyone, but definitely a tough one.
It definitely is. So moving from being in like an anger-filled environment and stuff like that, for me, and having a lot of frustration my whole educational period, to having great teachers like Miss Dreyer, who pretty much helped me graduate. I was behind in credits. I was so behind in credits because I just gave up in school.
I didn't 4.5 at the beginning of your junior
not necessarily 4.5. I'm not gonna, but I had enough to shake a stick at. But I was definitely behind. I knew I was going to graduate. I didn't care about school. I didn't care about much.
Yeah.
I cared about my girlfriend. I cared about my little sister. And that's pretty much it.
Right.
I was just and I care about weight training because football was important to me because exercise was helping me cope with some of the things I was going through at my time.
So, but in order to play football, aren't you supposed to keep relatively good grades in order to stay
Yeah.
in?
Yeah. But before I started playing sports, my grades were shit. So I had to play catch up from freshman
Okay.
and
Okay.
sophomore
So
year.
that's when that kind of brought it together for you. It
Yes.
made it more important for you to get
Oh
those
yeah.
credits to
It definitely did.
graduate. Yeah.
Yeah. Having young leaders. A lot of my football coach was like fresh out of graduating college.
Yeah.
And he was just had a bunch of his college buddies come help mentor the team. So that was a really big impact for me, having positive role models in my life as well.
Yeah.
Did you have? And I already talked about Mr. Miranda. So did you have positive role models in your life at that time, mentoring you as you were wrapping up your school period?
I not that I can think of like off the top of my head, which I guess is kind of sad, but um, I guess I just for myself was like it's really became I don't even know why it all of a sudden became really important for me to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. That's kind of I'm not yeah no I don't know, dude.
Hey, nothing wrong with it. It's tough hearing that people don't have a support system, but there's a lot of people who I've experienced in my life who haven't had any support system.
Right.
Nothing.
Well, my husband's definitely been a huge support system, even back during that time when I was living in Bakersfield. Um, he was a good encouragement. So I guess maybe he would be a mentor, but at the same time, I don't know if your spouse is a mentor because that's just
it's just your other half, yeah.
Your other half, right? So, but he was definitely a good encouragement in that area during that time because when we moved from Gold Bar to California, Sultan High School, all of the few credits that I earned there, because like I said, I wasn't making good life choices, they had also put me in an alternative school. And they were like, we're going to put you in this program, but you have to graduate through this program to essentially get our graduation numbers up higher, or you don't get any of the credits that you earned while you were going to school here, which is illegal.
And horrible.
So I only had the 4.5 credits that I earned as a freshman when I started my junior year, and there was nothing that any counselor could do for me to fix that. And the only thing that saved me was I had a copy of my transcript from when I was going to Cle Elum High School. So that's like, I had to self-advocate definitely in that period of my life, because if I didn't, then it would have been absolutely impossible for me to graduate.
Yeah.
And then when I started going to Mount Lake Terrace High School, like I told you, the counselor couldn't decipher my transcript, so we did the best we could with that. And then she told me that in order to graduate, I needed to take an extra class in the evening. So I was like, okay, no problem, I'll do that. So I did that. And then when it came time to graduate, I ended up graduating with more credits than I needed because she didn't know how to decipher for my transcript. But at the same time, that is a life lesson.
Yeah.
If you keep your nose to the grindstone and you do right and you do what you're supposed to be doing, then you don't have to do extra at the end of your senior year, right?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. I had to do a lot of things at the end of my senior year. There was a lot of begging and pleading with people to grade my papers. I lost. I moved. I had to forcibly move home twice in my junior and senior year, and I lost my laptops with all my projects on it. Like my senior project, I had to restart. There was no like Google. I wasn't using Google Documents, which I recommend to everybody. Google Documents or
saves automatically.
Saves automatically. Thank God. Like for that later on in life when I figured it out, but I didn't have any resources whatsoever, so I was completely screwed. My laptop got smashed at my house in front of me, and I had no resources. So for me, having to beg my teachers and without trying to out my living situation and stuff like that, because it was super embarrassing too.
Right.
I didn't want to get too much attention drawn to me. I ended up telling my counselors and my students and around me that, oh yeah, blah blah, I lost my laptop. I don't know where it went. And my teacher was like, oh well, that's your problem, mister. Like this is your responsibility. And I was in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, this sucks.
Yeah.
But I had to play catch up, and it's never fun.
No.
Never fun.
Absolutely
It's
not.
way too much time redoing like 56 slides on slideshows and reading research papers. I can write research papers pretty easily.
Yeah.
But reading is really a struggle for me. So
curiosity, I'm going to ask you a quick question. What
Okay.
did you choose for your topic for your senior project?
I did beauty in Barber College in Everett, or sorry, Evergreen Beauty and Barber College over there in Everett, because my dad was cutting hair. And I was like, oh, I'm around it all the time. Easy senior project. It was easy senior project. Everyone thought I was gonna go do hair. I surprised bitches went to the military, and it was easy. I could write the stuff. I pretty much, and I had to restart my project.
Because you had a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, I had a lot of knowledge. So I just I was
Right.
cutting my friend's hair at my house a lot of times during school, because I lived at the time right across from school. So
Yeah.
I walk across the street with my buddies, cut their hair, and they go back to school. And I mean, I would if you're already involved in the system, you might as well take advantage of it.
Right.
So I instead of fortifying my firing position and adding more skills to my beautiful sand pit of death, I decided to just use the same stuff. I took the easy way out. I should have just done joining the military. It was easier. It would have been way easier. It's just I'm going to the military. Just fail me on this. I'm still gonna pass.
Interesting.
Yeah, I should have. But what did you do on yours?
I didn't do a senior project.
You didn't do a senior project? Everybody got lucky but me. Everybody got lucky but me. Did they not have one?
Have to do so. The counselor just kind of exempt me from it, just like because of the alternative school that I went to, and because we really had to like monkey around those credits that I earned, because the way that the alternative school was like, we're going to make sure you get your basics and then everything else is elective. And what they offered to you each semester would just randomly be different. So it was like just putting together a little puzzle of, well, it's almost a shape. We'll make that work,
Oh, man.
So.
Well, I remember, I think my honest favorite part about schooling towards the end, I worked so hard to play catch up, and I spent so many nights. I was up to like 3 a.m. most nights for the first 6 months of my senior year, just trying to wrap up all the things I missed. So I got so ahead in credits. My counselors called me in and said, all right, well, the last part of your senior year, you can either like miss 2 classes and just stay home, or you can pick electives. And I said, I picked electives. I said, okay, what language are you learning? I said, none. I want to be in weight training and I want to be in team sports. And they're like, are you serious? And I said, yes. So I'd wake up at 6 at like before school. I'd be in the weight room in the morning with the football team usually. During school, I'd be doing extracurricular exercises.
Yeah.
So like just for muscle building, and then during team sports, we'd crush it. I would inspire my team. Yeah. We'd strive to victory, and we I think we lost one thing ever. We made it a point to crush all the basketball players, everybody who played other sports.
Yeah.
Me, and I'd pick the weakest people on the team every time, because I really believed that they were picked last, and it was bullshit. Because anyone who's inspired will always perform at the peak performance.
Absolutely. So if
that might be better than the cocky guys
last, then right.
Yeah.
Well, and kind of on that same subject, as far as education goes, if you are continuously failing in the same areas of the same subject, and nobody can seem to get through to you to help you explain this, how like it does something to your psyche, where you've been defeated to a point of where you don't believe that you could actually succeed past that point. So it makes it hard for you to be able to succeed past that point, right?
It definitely does.
And I think a lot of kids get stuck in that place in the public school system, and then they end up making rough choices in their life because they're defeated.
There's a lot of truth to that statement. There's so much truth there. I definitely have had my struggles with feeling defeated, and I don't like. That's might be one of the things why I subconsciously try to avoid defeat, and I'll pretty much do anything to avoid defeat ultimately, because it is such a horrible feeling, and to not have anybody have faith in you is even worse.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I chose to homeschool, because guess I didn't want my children to face that repeated utter defeat and then make bad choices in their life because, you defeated and you can't excel. And not to say that they wouldn't, but we'll get a little bit further into all of that later.
Mhm.
So, but did eventually graduate from Mount Lake Terrace High School, which woohoo, that was a lot of fun. It was definitely like there was points of my high school that I felt like it was never going to happen, which, I guess when with being dyslexic and struggling continuously through, how many years people do school for? 12, right?
Yeah,
13,
12,
including
sometimes 13.
Yeah.
Sometimes even 14, depending on how many times you
14.
get held back.
Eek. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which they don't really do that anymore.
They don't
Like to hold.
Yeah, they found push programs.
Now that exactly, is keep pushing them through.
Yeah,
Pushing
it's like,
them through,
hey, you're gonna take this special class. We're gonna put you in with the special ed students, and we're gonna allow you to just do this during this period. Yeah. All your electives go away.
Right. Yeah. Right. Which. How fun is that?
How fun is super fun, super right? Fun. And then the bullying aspect increases. I had a friend in
because then you're classes. Labeled for your whole school career, and I got to remember that the people can't see the air quotes.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
there,
absolutely.
There was air quotes there.
There's air. I've definitely had like friends be called retards and stuff like that because they were in a lot of special classes.
Yeah.
That had to do with just for this period of time we're just gonna do it was specialized teaching, and especially for kids who were in a certain status of risky homes, and there was this great correlation between. I wouldn't say great; it was fucking horrible. It was a correlation between classes that and people in these classes that have had really bad home lives.
Yeah,
and I was put in one of those classes personally. People want to do it. One time I did get called a retard, and I punched this kid in the face.
Yeah.
A few times because I was really frustrated with one using mental retardation as a derogatory term. Right. It's kind of shitty. And then two, don't why would you say something like that to another person?
Why would you hurt them when they're already down? You know.
And this is before I would call myself rehabilitated now. I'm not the same frustrated young man I used to be. High strung, pissed off,
right?
Trying to be super outgoing and trying to make up for my lost interaction with other human beings because I was so isolated for so many years before that.
Yeah,
and it all just swirls into a big pile of a big fucked up conundrum of frustration.
Yeah,
and
100%.
And you don't have faith in yourself anymore.
No,
and it's not good. It's not good.
No, the family dynamic is really important, and if there's a lot of toxicity there, then children just absorb that, and then they put that back out into the world, and it's just a really nasty give and take.
Well, on that note, why don't you tell me about some of the things that you as a parent, because you obviously have little ones, right?
Not so little ones,
but they're pretty medium-sized big ones. And they're growing into their own way. They're coming into their own way as human beings in this beautiful, lovely country we have here. What things have you really focused on as a mother, instilling into them over the course of your years on this earth with them?
Instilling,
giving them, what characteristics did you pass down? What things did you not pass down from your previous generation? That you're what generational curses and generation blessings?
Yeah. Okay. So along the topic that we were just talking, is not transferring that toxicity has really been, it's a big struggle as a parent, because when you're raised in an unhealthy family environment, it's hard to not be that as a parent, because that's kind of all that you see, right? So there was a lot of years when they were younger that I really struggled with the anger, because being a stay-at-home mom, you are with your kids constantly. And I know a lot of stay-at-home moms are going to feel this. You don't get out enough. You don't feel like you get enough help. So you get into a cycle.
Okay.
And then the cycle of anger just kind of, it's hard to break it, because day in, day out, your kid gets up, does something that makes you angry. Then you just kind of fuel into that same anger that you had the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just trying to not continuously do that is very difficult.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. And because you don't want to damage your kids, because you don't know how to control yourself.
Did you experience a lot of that same? Is that something that you've experienced as a child personally, going through that day-to-day basis of?
Yes.
I some people call it different things. I like to call it a mirror moment. So you're looking in your child's eyes and you see the exact same look that you felt, and it's this weird, unearthly emotion, and it just overwhelms you.
Absolutely. And my mom did the best that she could for us, but again, single parent, 5 kids. She worked. She didn't have a lot of patience because she didn't have a lot of time. And
those two go together, patient and time.
Absolutely. And then ironically, if you spend too much time around your kids, you don't really have very much patience because they wear on your nerves constantly. And so dads, help your stay-at-home mom. Okay, take the kids to the park, let her have a spa day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's having the reset is very important in breaking the cycle of anger, I feel.
Okay.
So yeah, not transferring anger is probably my biggest struggle.
Okay. I would call it just knowing you as an individual, and knowing how much your children look to you for your leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And there's times where I've observed how you behave with them and how you conduct yourself, and it is from a place of wisdom versus a place of inexperience. You've definitely you've learned a lot of lessons about yourself, obviously, and about them, and about your upbringing, and all these things contribute to how your children look at you. I see them look to you for guidance. I don't want to make a shitty comparison, but a lot of times, I'll get hit like a ton of bricks when I see other parents get their kids look to them. Not necessarily like, oh, is mom watching me, or am I going to get in trouble? But I'm looking back at my mom to see what she's doing and try to mirror that same way of speaking. Like you'll see it with Anthony and Brian. He mirrors his way of speaking. Your daughter mirrors your sense of kindness and commitment to her ideology that you instilled in her.
Yeah.
So other than
thankful for that. Yeah.
Well, yes, that's all my man. It's crazy to be as a future father to see people have a great relationship with their children.
Yeah.
When a lot of times you make it up as you go. There's no book on this.
Right.
I mean, that's a lie. There's a bunch of books on it, but that's written from their experience.
And that's exactly right. It's written from their experience, and it's not. It's different for everyone. Mm-hmm. Because again, the giant round ball into the square box, it's not gonna fit appropriately
at all.
It's not. So
what else are you not going to pass to your children?
Alcoholism. Trying really hard on that one. I don't drink heavily. I very, very much drink selectively, if at all, at times. And then it's the generational alcoholism that kind of scares the crap out of me, because everybody says it's a disease, which it's a choice. You choose to drink, But addiction is a real problem.
It's absolute travesty that stains humanity.
Absolutely. And it scars more than just the person who's drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely try to make sure that they are. I'm very, very open book with my kids. I am straight to the point. I do not sugarcoat anything for
Mm-hmm.
them. I have a rule: if you're old enough to ask me the question, you are old enough to hear the straight up real life answer. And there's been a few times that I'm like, I don't know if I am ready to answer this question for you. Like, can you give me just a little bit of time so that I can think this through? But I just, yeah, try to make sure that they know that addiction is a real problem in today's society. And we live up in Everett, and well,
It's no secret.
if you go out enough, you see it. So if you go out at all, let's be real, if you go out of your house at all, you're gonna see it. So
I definitely have seen my fair share of addiction. I come from a long line of people who have dealt with mental health in poor ways. My grandpa committed suicide after he came back from war. My dad was an absolute alcoholic. My stepdad has struggled with his own struggles with alcoholism and managing post traumatic stress.
Yeah.
A lot of times therapy doesn't fix everybody. And we can try, like, especially for vets, we can try to talk to as many people as we can. You can't undo the same reaction of losing a friend next to you or having somebody murdered to death in front of your face.
Right.
You'll never be able to quell somebody screaming at night by dealing with it through a bottle.
Right. Absolutely.
And you know what, Dad, if you listen to this, I know you're gonna get pissed, but it's the truth. We can't fix our problems by diving into a bottle. So I set hard boundaries myself.
Right.
I've been raised around alcohol my whole life, and it's always been something I'm consciously asking myself every time I take a sip of anything that has to do with alcohol. I ask myself, am I drinking because I need to, or am I drinking something because I want to? Am I drinking this because I'm upset? Am I drinking this because I'm frustrated? If I have a reason to drink other than just to relax and enjoy myself as an adult, I don't do it.
Right.
It's a big hard no, and sometimes I get in funks because I'm really frustrated with things that I experienced from my childhood. I'd hide my parents' beer.
Yeah.
I'd hide their liquor. I would, and it's gotten me into fistfights with my biological father multiple times.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. 7 days before I left for the Navy, that was the start of our big issue.
Right.
Was me hiding alcohol because I didn't want him to embarrass me in front of my now wife. And alcohol and alcoholism and going over the top, it leaves lasting stains on children, especially.
Yes,
and it'll hit you it'll hit the kids at the worst time. And as a future parent, that's one thing I never want my child to have to experience, this feeling of overwhelming insecurity about who I am now. Like, am I drinking too much, or am or I'm not drinking today? Is that because I'm worried about being this? The thoughts can spiral in your head.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely, but I think it's those same thoughts spiraling that help keep you straight.
Yes.
Right. So
absolutely,
it's really kind of a sick give and take, huh?
It is a sick give and take. So I know we talked about what things that we aren't personally not going to pass on to the youth in our families in the future. What do you instill to your children? What lessons do you give them? What characteristics do you want them to carry on? Because as parents and as members of the community, we don't want anybody to be just like us. We want them to develop into their own beautiful butterfly. Spread your wings, right?
Absolutely. Right. Like, you got to do better for your kids than what was done for you. Mm-hmm. Right. So I guess part of the good things I would like to pass on to them would be, I want them to just be confident, successful members of society. And, hard work is always rewarded with a reasonably good life, I would like to think. I I've always told them that you can do whatever you put your mind to. For instance, Anthony learned how to do the Rubik's Cube, I want to say when he was like 12, 13 years old.
I still can't figure that thing out.
And he had initially started trying to learn all the algorithms when he was probably 9, 10 years old, where between 9 and 10 years old and 12 and 13 years old, there's a lot of development that happens in the brain, right? So when he was younger, he was not able to decipher it, and he actually put it down for probably close to a year. And then he went back to it and put the time in, and the time and the time and the time, and he learned how to solve the Rubik's Cube. And not only the standard Rubik's Cube, but now he has like 6 different variations of the cubes, and he can solve most of them. So I definitely, want my kids to not be quitters. Like, don't give up on things that you believe in. Do the things that you want to do in your life. If you want to travel, go travel. Go, be the best version of yourself that you can be. Don't I guess swelter your dreams, So
That's something I definitely want to pass to my children as well, because I heard this crazy motivational video when I was, really in a dark place after leaving the military. And I listen to motivational music and videos all the time, because for me, that was literally my saving grace. I had no reason to continue. Like, obviously my wife and my sister are like really important to me and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even but like a lot of people who in their life don't have things that keep them going.
Right.
And they do have things that could keep them going, as far as we look at it, but to them it's just this big hole of emptiness. Yeah. So I put out my feelers, and I tried to feel everything that could possibly help me, because I was absolutely desperate.
It's important to do that. Do not leave yourself sitting alone in the darkness
for
too long.
Oh no, it ate me up for a while. But I came across this episode where it said someone right now is laying in bed begging God for another chance at life. 100%. And that was it for me. I something clicked, and I was like, how freaking, how ridiculous it is for me to not want to live life right now. I have to break this out of this funk. And so the fitness just did it for me. I locked it in, and listening to music that after I listen to that often, and it really always reminds me of great perspective. And I gain a lot of great perspective. I gain perspective from you sitting here. I gain perspective from my dog when it wakes up and wants to be happy with me no matter what I do. I gain perspective from listening to little birds in the morning wake me up, because I'm pissed. They're chirping loud as hell, and it's pissing me off, and I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, hey, at least I'm awake to live it, right?
Be able to hear them.
So perspective is huge.
Huge, yeah. And then the other thing that I thought it was very important to pass down to them, and it's really the main thing, is to have a love for God. And we have some pretty solid church attendance that we've had since my kids were really small. We started going when Anthony was 4 or 5 years old. Mm-hmm. And my daughter's been going to our church since she was in the nursery. So, raising them in that kind of a community with all that support and, guidance, showing us how to, a good, healthy way to live. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't follow a lot of those rules in this day and age. So, and I feel like it's very helpful if you have a healthy church attendance. It keeps you accountable in a way to keep the healthy mindset, and then it's filling your mind full of goodness twice a week.
Yeah,
and how to kind of keep your mind in a healthy place. So
totally. And I've gained a lot from people that at a church I used to go to before I left for the military, and I have a lot of friends that aren't churchgoers, but they they find that same sense of community, but it's a little harder for them a lot of times for them. But I have always really taken that sense of community very seriously. There's so many lessons you can get from the Bible. I put one at the start of episode 3 of Service and Sacrifice with Alan Hernandez, and I loved the quote. It was so beautiful. There's so many different quotes on there that'll really speak out to me.
Yeah.
Talking about holding fast,
Yeah.
putting on the full armor of God, loving your
Absolutely.
neighbor, not judging other people,
Right.
but hoping the best for them through prayer, right? There's so many different lessons that you can
Right.
give. And not all the lessons are as polarized as they're made to seem. I think that
100%.
a lot of people, there's a lot of false prophets out there that use the word of God to for personal gain,
Oh, yeah.
or especially just to cling on to something because they're really horrible people, and they
Right.
act horribly to other people, and that's why I say
Yeah.
the word horrible.
Yeah.
Just completely horrible to other people.
Yeah.
I love the fact that churches have a community, and they do potlucks after church
Yes.
on Sundays.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's youth groups, there's
Oh, we're
support.
Baptists. It's all about the food.
All about the
That's
food.
the
I
Baptist
love it.
church. Yeah. Oh my goodness. All about the food. Yeah. But on this note, I would like to say that we do not go to church for the people. We
Mhm.
go to church definitely to gain or to build on our relationship with God. And if we, gain some good friendships along the way. But I'm going to tell you, if you are looking for somebody to let you down, usually it'll be that member of the church that you have been looking up to for a while, and then all of a sudden they're just gone.
Mm-hmm.
So the church is a good community to lean on, but at the same time, you got to make sure you're not going there for the people to build. I mean, it is important to fellowship and build relationships with people in the church, but don't go there for the people.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to make sure that you go there for the right reasons.
And I feel I totally agree with you. One of the craziest things about religion in general, and especially in our country, is that there's so many different factions and facets of it. And there are some out there, I'm not going to name any, but if they show up at your front door and they'll excommunicate you if you miss a day of church,
Yeah.
or if you dress
Yeah.
a certain way, or if you listen to a certain podcaster or something like that. And I always say the key word in the word culture is cult. So avoid that shit. Please do avoid it. And I think it is great that you found a further development in your relationship with God through a good church that works for you. And a lot of people that I've known in my life have struggled with that. I found a great one in Virginia, and it was an overwhelming experience.
Yeah.
I was crying a bunch, and I felt this overwhelming existential feeling.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't get that emotional attachment or that feeling of belonging, being in the right exact spot at the right time, and destiny rings its gong, and you get you feel like the angels are literally looking at you or something like that. A lot of people don't get that, and it's something I hope for everybody to find.
Yeah.
And have faith in something. If not in God, if not in Christianity, with something. You have to have faith.
But you have to be also very careful what you put your faith in.
Yes, that is a fact.
I definitely like to just keep my faith in God, because if I put it other places, and I get let down almost every time, and you don't want that.
Absolutely,
don't want that. So
it can definitely be frustrating.
Yeah.
So you are obviously one of my favorite teachers, and you're the first person I'm having on in this whole series of what's called teachers.
Yeah.
Right. And a teacher doesn't have to be somebody who has a badge that says Edmond School District on it.
Correct.
A teacher does not have to be somebody who is state accredited, has a piece of paper that says they can dictate what your children know or don't know.
Right.
A teacher is somebody who goes out of their way to influence a group of people, in my opinion, in the best way they can. So you as a teacher at home, how did you start that? How did you go about it? What made you want to do it other than your experience with school?
So my son had a really interesting kindergarten teacher. It was probably the first red flag for me that made me go, I don't know if I want my child in the public school system. He would come home saying that she was screaming at them.
Oh no.
That she was really tired all the time and grumpy, and so I'm like, eek, that doesn't sound good. I've got some questions in my mind as to, well, I think, and she was very young. She was maybe 22. So, just came into her quote adulthood and was living her quote adult life. And then it's overflowing into her Monday through Friday gig where she's supposed to be teaching kindergartners.
Oh boy.
So,
and that's a very, 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 very volatile age group right there.
Yes, correct. So I just kind of like, okay, well, we had moved from Linwood to Everett during that year, and I decided that, okay, since we're getting out of that school district, maybe the next one will be better, and we moved up to Everett. And his teacher was a bit better. She was older. She'd been a teacher for a very long time, so she was well seasoned, and she did reasonably well with the kids. But I got a lot of telephone calls because my son, being 5, 6 years old, very wiggly in first grade, as a boy should be, um, would get up in the middle of her teaching and go to the back of the room and grab a book and sit down on the floor and start reading it. So he did not want to conform to the structure of the classroom. Mm-hmm. He wanted to learn how to read.
And teachers don't normally react very well to that, in my experience.
No.
They freaked out if I've done that. I've grabbed a book, I just sat down in the back of the room, like, oh, well, she's talking about whatever she's talking about.
Yeah.
Time to learn something good.
And so it was that, and then he would get frustrated because he wanted to learn how to read and he wasn't getting that extra support that he needed in the classroom. And me at home, I would work with him and everything, but I'm his mom, and at that point, like I said, he's a hyper little guy and doesn't really necessarily want to listen to mom. He wants to listen to the teacher, but then mom became the teacher and everything changed. But either way, it was just not a dynamic that was working out for him. Mm-hmm. And then he started getting in trouble with violence in the classroom, and because he's frustrated, and they're telling me that they think he has ADHD.
Well, they just put the blanket label on any kid that doesn't want to conform.
And so I had gone to a meeting with the teacher, and she presented me with this form that I'm supposed to take to the doctor for the doctor to sign, that it already states that the teacher thinks that my son has ADHD. And so the doctor, I'm already in my mind, like, this doctor's just going to sign right off on it. And then they want to give him some pills. They want to put my kid on medication. And I'm not on board with that. I had already been expressing to the teacher that, well, and as soon as she mentioned ADHD to me, I'm like, we have kind of generational dyslexia in my family. Can we maybe start doing some things to help support him in that area? And she just pretty much dismissed me, and the problem got worse. And before I know it, we're in a meeting with the principal, the superintendent, every counselor in the school, his teacher, and I have printed off endless information about dyslexia and what the child needs. And just for the record, every school in the district, every teacher in the classroom is supposed to have a binder full of learning disabilities and how to recognize them, how to help them, what they can do, what tools they can have to help these children to learn that have these learning disabilities. And like you were talking about earlier, usually they just do what? Put them in special class.
Put them in special ed class, yeah.
Right. And
try to give them drugs.
And exactly. So I presented them with a stack of information about dyslexia and about how by law they're supposed to have this in the classroom to be able to help these children, and how they don't. And it was just a lot for naught. We never got anywhere with it. They repeatedly were just like, well, we're going to test him, and whatever the test comes back saying that he has is what we're going to try to treat it for.
Yeah, just completely subverting the parents' wishes.
And it was about that moment that I was like, I think it was the next day that he was actually in class. The teacher came to me with so the meeting, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, we're good. I'm thinking this will just be his last year in this school and we'll just homeschool from here on out because I'm not going to allow you to label my son with something that's going to follow him for the rest of his school career and hold him back. Mm-hmm. Not going to be a thing.
Good for you.
Oh, and Brian was in the meeting. And
he probably had some nice words to say.
Let me tell you, he definitely had a lot to say to the principal himself because there was a couple of different times that Anthony ended up in the principal's office and this man screamed at our son.
And you're talking about a kid in kindergarten, correct?
First grade.
So we're in first grade.
We're in first grade. Yeah.
So screaming at a first grader.
Yeah, this was here in the Everett School District.
Yeah.
Where I live. Here is Linwood, but
yeah, they don't do that shit here. These yeah.
Mm-mm. No, they just have really questionable kindergarten teachers and
yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly. The teachers get drunk instead.
Right, and then go to the class hungover and scream at the kids, which can't help your headache if you already are hungover.
Well, you know what? It helps the rage. Just feel it, right? Oh my goodness. I
can't transfer my rage to my children, I'm not gonna let you do it either.
Yes,
okay?
Lord. I know that's right.
Take a step back, lady.
Well, it could be extremely frustrating to have to deal with stuff like that. I don't know a single. I think maybe I would, if I could do some honest to God good fractions, I would say 9 out of 10 boys that I know were told that they had ADHD around this time. It's a big wave. There was a bunch of books coming out. Also, one of the crazy thing about these drugs, it has a serious effect on a lot of things. There's scientific studies tying back to the drugs they put you on for ADHD or ADD even being pretty much kind of like meth light. It is an amphetamine as the root in this, and which is kind of weird for me. I get that you need to, as a teacher, feel like you have control of a room, and I get that you want to make sure your test scores stay up, but drugging kids just because they're young and rambunctious and don't have enough energy outlet. There's a bunch of things we can do. Yeah. Like for me, fitness was great as a child. They put me in a lot of sports. I was doing outgoing things. I had a trampoline in my backyard.
Yeah.
So school was. So I'm done with school. I'm on a trampoline after my homework's done, and that was fine for me. I was good in school now.
They had these first graders had 1 10-minute break in the morning and a 30-minute lunch. And that includes the time to eat.
That ain't gonna do it.
And that was it.
Kids' minds just go everywhere. Like it's like a little baby.
How are you gonna expect a first grader to sit down and be still in a classroom setting for that? That is unrealistic expectations for a wiggly little child.
For any child ever, ever. I don't know a kid that can sit still. Like our kids are not meant to be robots. They're meant to learn new things. Do exercises that are outside the syllabus. So I can definitely understand the frustration there, and I would have pulled them too. Yeah, why not?
Right.
Yeah, there's so many better things.
At that point, I was at home with my daughter, blessed to be a stay-at-home mom for many, 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 many years, and I was just like, why is he over here having all of these problems? Doesn't want to listen to the teacher, doesn't want to conform, reeling him back in. I'll just teach him from home. Why not? Mm-hmm. And initially we started with an online program that was through the state. It was a hot mess of, we enrolled in the program. They lagged and lagged and lagged. I had applied for the program at the beginning of August. Here it was mid-October and they still hadn't gotten us registered, gotten us our books. So they started us off late in the school year. And then the workload that they expected was pretty extensive. And it was almost impossible to keep up with it. So then I went from being stay-at-home mom with one kid to push. And I had a really dear friend that was doing traditional homeschooling and was looking at me like I was crazy going, why are you doing all of that? It's not supposed to be that hard. It's supposed to be freeing. It's supposed to be easier. And I'm looking at her like she's crazy because society has trained us that school is the schoolhouse. It is sitting there being presented 5 different subjects in a day, very structured, very paperwork, very just cut and dry.
Cookie cutter, yeah.
Cut and dry, right? Yes, cookie cutter, exactly. And that's, even to this day, people ask me like, you how do you know if your kids are being successful in their grade? You test them, right? Well, sure, I do. I don't do like excessive testing because, like we talked about, my children do not benefit very much from excessive testing. Their test scores are not a reflection of how educated they are
at all.
I do not believe in that at all. So we fought with this program for a few years, and then I finally listened to my friend and found the freedom that is I call it independent. No, not independent. It's interest driven learning that is independent. So they do independently pick out what subjects they would like to study on. I make sure that they do math and history, and a lot of the time history will even just be kind of in the base lesson. Like Natalie, for instance, is over the top about history. She cannot learn enough about history. She's constantly just in tune with that. Just sometimes I'm like, okay, that's really great. I'm glad that you know this much about the Korean War, but can you maybe just kind of come over here and read up on this for a little while? So, but that's the love of the interest driven learning. Like, she will just educate herself, and that's the biggest takeaway from homeschooling for me is you teach the kids how to learn, and then they just kind of take it from there. You know, like if you teach them how to read, you teach them how to write, you teach them how to take away bits of that information from what they read that is most important out of what they've read, leave all the useless stuff aside, then they'll be learning for the rest of their life. And that's the biggest key.
So if the foundation is good, the house will have a lot more years.
Exactly.
Pretty much. And the roots from the trees, that no matter how tall they grow, they won't mess it up.
Yep. And I'll even say, after we left the state-based program that we were in, I still struggled with trying to find that. Like, I spent a lot of money on different curriculums because I thought that's what I had to do. You have to present them with a curriculum. They have to complete the curriculum. They have to have, and there is a lot of freedom in homeschooling. There was a lot of times that I was like, especially with my son, is this fight really worth it? Is me continuously pushing him in this direction where because he is a strong-headed guy.
Yeah.
Like, if he does not want to do something, he's not going to do it. Yeah. Plain and simple, which can be a good thing. And he is a very strong-headed. He's got a lot of leadership in him, and he's gonna go really far with himself, but it's gonna be on his own terms. That is definitely for sure.
I think there's a lot of hard lessons that come with that mindset.
Yeah.
And he's got to learn them, and he has been learning them.
Yes, he has. Some of them he's learned them repeatedly, because he's a little bit
yeah,
a little slow to learn some of them.
But I have a book that I would recommend to anybody who has dealing with a young child who's of a good age. So he's old. I think by your standards that I know of, he would be okay listening to this book. It's called Scars and Stripes by Tim Kennedy.
Okay.
And I listened to this book, and I wish I would have had this book when I was a kid growing up. It might have helped me dealt with things a different way. Tim's not a guy who is like an average child either.
Okay.
He didn't learn the average way. He was very hard-headed. He was very, very, very. Listen, this. I'm not going to do that because this is stupid. So, and a lot of times it was, wow, I cannot believe I just made that horrible mistake.
Yeah.
My mistake this attitude led me to this.
Yeah.
And it was a good perspective builder, and perspective is how we grow as humans. So I'm definitely going to make sure to shoot it to Anthony if that's okay with
Yeah,
you. He would love it.
Yeah.
It's an
let's do that.
audiobook. If he stays up, if he just sits at home for a whole weekend and listens to it, it would be a great. If he's still in school right now, it would be a great homework assignment for him.
Okay.
And if you gave him,
You hear that, Anthony? You have a homework assignment via Eddie.
and if he could, if you had to write a paper on it, it would be, it's gonna be a huge emotional experience for him, because there's gonna be he's gonna have some tears probably.
Yeah.
It's hard to listen to a book like that and experience the things in first person as Tim wrote it.
Yeah.
With his guy.
Yeah.
So it was all in first person, and Anthony's gonna have a new hero by the end of it, because this guy's great, and that's just one more person to help mold him into the person that you want him to be. And no matter who listens to it, it's an amazing book.
I'm gonna have to probably listen to it myself there. But...
I cried a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because
I'll make sure I have that box of tissues.
You had the box of tissues ready, because
I'm gonna object, Eddie. You need to have one within range of this podcasting, because when you go off the deep end, my friend, you gotta have tissues.
I think in the future I'm gonna. I usually just cry, and I just let it either dry up or I wipe it on my sleeve. So I'm not used to that. I'm gonna take that as a good recommendation, and I will make sure to add that.
Okay.
So obviously, as you're going through being a mom, going through schooling your child, there's a lot of lessons that you personally gained. Like, what's some things that you gained from that experience?
Well, definitely being a young mother, had Anthony when I was 19 years old. He really taught me a lot, because like I said, he's very hard-headed. So he and I have had countless power struggles, because he is very, very strong-willed, and when he gets his mind set, it is set, and he just definitely has helped me grow and learn to control the anger monster, as we were talking about earlier.
Oh yes.
Because he and I kind of ended up growing up together, because now he's 17 and I'm 36. That's still pretty young as a mother, and he's
super young, yeah.
18. So he's just still, even today, he just tries and tries and tries to do his best. But when you're a young growing up boy, you want to make a lot of mistakes, because that's how you learn, right?
Oh yeah.
So, and then as the mother, trying to guide that and navigate and get him to complete certain things in school and things like that has really, really taught me a lot of patience. And it's really funny, because when I was pregnant with him, everybody has baby shower when you're pregnant. We played this game where everybody that was at the baby shower got a little piece of paper and a pencil, and you got to write one word on the paper that would be your best advice to the parent, right, of the unborn child. And I want to say we had 10, maybe 12 guests there, and 9 of those pieces of paper said patience. Wow. And I will forever remember that.
It's one of those full circle moments.
Definitely. And I tell you, I've needed a lot of patience with him. So.
Oh my goodness. I definitely wish I had more patience with just the youth in my life as well. I try to spend a lot of time gaining knowledge from youth, because they're so full of new things.
Yeah.
I didn't have cell phones and all these stuff growing up when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I learned how to communicate verbally with people. I didn't text. I called people.
Yes.
There's a lot of so many crazy differences. I use the slow ass internet. This new internet's crazy. I press a button, something shows up on my screen.
You don't
great.
even have to hear the
no,
you don't. None of that.
In this very same room, I heard that. It was so disgusting. Like, like the different tones. It was ridiculous. I thought you think you have a goddamn transformer popping up in your computer, it about to explode. Oh, right? it was a mess. Yeah. And I really loved learning from Jackson, Brianna's brother, because he's so full of frustration and youth and trying to understand, but can't understand because you're too full of yourself, and you need to bring down the ego and raise that humility. And as you become more humble, the more you learn.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn a
Absolutely.
lot without being super humble. I try to have no ego. I have no expectations from anybody else in life. I let people do what they want.
Yeah.
If you want to be a bad person, I'm not going to be around you, obviously. But if you're learning with me and growing with me, we can all grow together and we can share our experiences.
Absolutely.
I think
And I love what you said there. Kids have so much
yeah,
to teach us because their mind is so, they see things in such an innocent way that we as adults no longer see it. So there's always lessons to be learned from your kids. Always listen to what your kids are saying to you because there is a lesson. There is a lesson there.
I remember watching them, feeling like they all happiness had disappeared from the world. Listening to my friend, I was at a party and we just had you had those one-on-ones with your friend. Uh, he had way too much to drink, but he was just in a funk. And I was talking with him, and he said, "I feel like I've just grown up so fast." And I'm like, "Bro, you're about to turn 30. Like, yeah, you're growing up. Like, what do you mean?" He's having one of those I miss my childhood moments, and we all have them.
That's
We
a
just
real thing.
don't usually talk about it. But he said, I feel like all the magic had been robbed from me, and seeing my my children grow, it
That is a thing.
helps remind me that all the magic disappeared from life. And
Yeah.
I feel colder. Children don't have to worry about mistrust or people that are lying to them. All they got to worry about is doing what mommy and daddy say and how to get to the next TV show.
Right.
Well,
now it's like to the next TikTok.
The next TikTok. Yeah, I don't do TikTok.
No, me neither. But like, that's just this generation, and you know how short those things are.
Yeah.
Talk about instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
Man.
I had to wait 30 minutes for a funny thing to show up on any TV show.
And then you had to wait through the commercials too.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. Investments in dopamine. So obviously you're a American.
Yes.
And last time I checked, the last thing you told me is that you're a woman. So I'm going to believe you. You are somebody who I look to as a good example of responsible gun ownership, disciplining your children, and showing them the true importance of not misusing firearms. So firearm safety is huge in your house.
Gun safety is very, very important.
Mm-hmm. What do you recommend to parents who are thinking about purchasing a firearm if they're just getting into it with kids, based off your experience?
First time gun ownership that's a very serious thing. Mm-hmm. Definitely start with self-education, because how are you going to educate your child if you are not educated in that area yourself? So that would definitely be step one. So maybe some classes that will show you how your firearm functions and how to clean it and keep it in good standing condition, because that's very important. If you have a dirty firearm, you never know what could end up happening. And then just all that you learn, teach that to your children. Like, you just have to make sure that they understand that, like, when my son was little, as most kiddos are very excited about Nerf guns, mm-hmm. Everybody thought that I was a psycho because I would not let my child have a Nerf gun until he was probably 8, maybe even 10 years old, because in my mind, that teaches a child that it is acceptable to point a weapon at another person and pull the trigger and think it's a game. And I did not take that lightly. Okay. Not even a little bit. So
that also should be respected, honestly, because you're his parent. Mm-hmm. You have to make decisions that you think are going to improve your child's life expectancy. Obviously, keeping blood in a young boy is hard enough without firearms around.
Amen. Isn't that the truth, my friend? So there was times where people would, like, they knew my stance on it and they would buy my child a Nerf gun anyway. So then I would have to withhold that from him, and then I'm the bad guy and he doesn't understand. And so obviously eventually he reached a certain age and I was like, okay, you want a Nerf gun? Let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. keep your finger off the
Don't press the banger switch
unless you are ready to fire that. And there was more than once that I caught him running around the house with his Nerf gun with that finger on the trigger. Oh, no, you lost it.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Yeah, because if he trips and your body reacts weirdly when you fall, you can pull a trigger. Right. All sorts of stuff could happen. And you know what? Ultimately, one day, obviously he operates firearms responsibly and stuff like that in a family and Nerf guns now, right? Yeah. But ultimately, one day, that small habit of keeping your finger on the trigger, like we see in the movies all the time with cops. If you make a poor habit and a poor decision and you keep your finger on the trigger.
On the trigger, yes. Sorry.
And it's all good. But you see in the movies. We see it in the movies.
It's running around,
finger on the trigger, flagging somebody, which is when you put your firearm at somebody else who you don't intend to fill up with bullet holes and stuff.
Right.
It's really not. These habits are really important to not let happen and not let them, kind of travel over to the kids, especially the kids.
Yeah. Especially when.
How many times you see the Fast and the Furious movie and the guy's like, oh yeah, I got this. Yeah. He's running around playing with guns and. It shows kids, it's fast-paced action. It's Hollywood. It's cool. We're pretty much, I would call it almost like a weird form of culture building, but also worshiping and praising firearms in a sense that it's like just for fun or whatever. And ultimately, it's not always a super positive thing.
No, especially because this day and age, Nerf guns are still like a huge thing, and a lot of these kids don't know anything about gun safety, and it's normal for them to be wielding Nerf guns. So you take that into adulthood of somebody who's never been taught anything, and then you got somebody running around with their finger on the trigger constantly, and then they shot their friend,
or they buy a hairpin trigger and then they bump it.
Right? No,
don't do not good stuff.
Don't do that.
Not good stuff. Oh my goodness. Well, that's one. It's super responsible and that's super awesome. I'm gonna be taking a lot of different approaches to me and Rena's future children. Yeah. I'm gonna be taking a lot of different approaches, and so you're giving me perspective so I can make good decisions and be a responsible parent.
I want to say you and Jackson have done something similar to that with the Nerf guns, haven't you?
Yes,
we started out his gun education with Nerf guns as well. So.
Nerf guns, and then we transferred into airsoft guns.
Yeah.
And now we're on firearms. Like he's more responsible with firearms than most adults.
Good.
We still have mistakes, but hey, it's better to make a mistake with me at a young age and learn from it than make a mistake as an adult and be in jail for a long time.
Right.
And aiming is important. So he wants to ultimately become a police officer and be in a SWAT team.
Oh, that would be very good for him.
I think so. If you miss your shots in a tactical unit, or if you're operating a firearm occupationally and you miss a shot, that could be somebody's child getting murdered in the background.
Correct.
And it is, and you are removing life from this earth, and it's never a positive thing.
Never.
It's good to have understanding of what guns do at a young age, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. It's not. I'm not saying it should be everybody's opinion.
Yeah.
But that's how I approach it. Like let's talk about not getting hurt. I give him life stories. I do share some of my life stories with him, and it's never a fun thing to talk about.
Yeah.
The damage that firearms can do, and what removing life from the world looks like, and stuff like that.
Correct. Yeah. I actually, up until I was probably 25, I had an irrational fear of guns.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
So what if you're comfortable with it, what happened?
I had an uncle who left this world abruptly due to domestic violence and gun violence, and we'll just kind of leave that as the summary of it. But after I found myself after that happening, because I was young, I want to say maybe I was 11 or 12 when that happened, and I would have vivid dreams about how the scenario played out.
Night terrors.
Correct.
So you were experiencing some post-traumatic stress, would you call it?
Maybe. Yeah, definitely trauma from it. So I would find myself clamming up and not being able to comfortably fire a weapon anymore when my dad has taught me since I was a little girl, you know, how to safely use guns, you know? So it was just, it took a very, very long time to work through that. And I remember specifically one time my husband and my brother and I went to a range, and it was the first time that I had ever been in an indoor shooting range.
Mhm.
And nobody had warned me how different it is because I'd always shot outside.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the sound, you know, what do they call it? The percussion?
Yeah, the
right?
percussion, yeah.
Just sent me over the top.
Oh,
I
no.
started crying hysterically, shaking. I was like, no, I can't do this. Get me out of here. And like, we had just got there.
Mhm.
So, you know, these two men are like,
They're so excited, right?
Right? Yeah. And I ended up just kind of standing off to the side, let them do their thing, because I wasn't like actually going to make them leave. I just went and tried to compose myself because I felt just completely ridiculous. You know?
I've been in a moment where I had a
Yeah.
like I call it a mini panic attack, because I full on
Yeah.
I don't get full on panic attacks. I get like these mini things where I feel like I started to get the cold sweats, and next thing I
Yeah.
know, I'm soaked, and I'm like, oh my god.
And your hearing starts to kind
Hearing
of
starts to be
and
weird.
yeah.
The ring. Do you get the ring too?
Yeah.
The tinnitus
especially in
kicks
that
in.
especially in that situation, because
Oh yeah.
you know, I had earplugs in and everything, but like you can feel
You
it
can hear
in your chest.
it's like the same exact pitch every time, and your chest
Yeah.
feels heavy, like someone's sitting on it slowly.
Yeah.
And
But
it's a very
good
terrifying
that you know
thing.
how to, like, when that begins, and there was a time in my life where I would actually have full-blown panic attacks, but I learned how to control it and, you know, recognize, because being able to recognize the panic is very, very, that's key.
Yeah. Okay, or otherwise you're in it. Otherwise you're
Yeah.
panicking.
It's just, yeah.
Yes.
The emotion takes over and you lose control, essentially.
And it's horrible. Like, I think the best way I can describe it is how I deal with it is, I stop where I'm walking. If I'm walking, I stop moving. I don't give a shit who's looking at me. I don't care, because this is about making sure that I'm able to maintain my life, control my life, keep control of my mind.
Correct.
And I might be in a situation where we don't have time to panic.
Yeah.
So I stop moving. I close my eyes, open them up less than a second later, and I say, this situation is happening. We're taking control of this now.
Yeah.
And I say we as in me,
myself
and my fear. so I'm harnessing that fear, that moment of I call it spiritual corruption. I'm completely corrupted. It's taken over my whole body.
That is a very good way to look at it, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's not God that's letting you feel that.
Oh
way.
no. It and when I'm in a corrupted state like that, I have to retake my situation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to be crippled. So you can either be crippled. If you're corrupted, you can become crippled by fear.
Yeah.
So I break off whatever I'm feeling, and I say, okay, this I'm taking control of the situation now. We're done here, and I don't talk to people the same. I treat people differently. I go into, people call it military mode sometimes.
Yeah.
But I break these chains that are holding me in autopilot, and I start my deep and breathe the other side of up. Start into the nose, out to the mouth. Focus on what I'm doing, and you know what? It leaves you. It does leave you, because breathing, putting air in your body, actually makes you less stressed out. Surprise, surprise. Don't hold your breath underwater for a long time.
No, but controlled breathing is like the number one way to control your panic, because what it does is it actually resets your panic reaction. So
yeah, and it's very helpful. It's super helpful for me. It might not work for everybody else. If you're having panic attacks, try it out. You'll be surprised. But if you don't try it out, you won't be surprised. It's okay.
6 seconds in, 8 seconds out, 6 seconds in.
Yes.
You do that a series of time, and you should start feeling a little bit of that Husfraba.
Yes. And I also flex my hands too. I open up my hands, because my hands are usually completely crushed into fists.
Yeah.
And I usually want to do things that are uncharacteristic of what I want to be. So
but in that moment relax. In the range, I definitely, the panic took over. It was just not a good situation, but I I don't think I've actually been to an indoor range since then because I'm like, you know what? That's just not for me.
And that's okay. And
Yeah,
that's
it's
okay.
not
You
for me.
recognizing that is great.
Yeah.
I don't like indoor ranges. I had a friend when I was deployed. His son got shot in the head at an indoor range
Oh,
while he was gone. And
wow.
his buddy from back home took his son. So I don't like indoor ranges because of that. I've gone
Yeah.
to one once and I left. I have never shot at an indoor range, and that's just my personal preference.
Yeah.
I like controlled environments when it
Yep.
comes to firearms.
Yeah.
I don't know who's there with me. I don't know who's been drinking and showed up. I don't know
Right.
who hasn't been cleared by the RSO. I don't know anything, and I
Right.
don't know how experienced the RSO is. I don't know if he feels comfortable grabbing my shoulder and moving me and trying to grab my firearm from me. I'm probably gonna react poorly because
Correct.
weapon retention is a thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know all these things, but I do know when I'm out in nature with the
Yeah.
birds and the bees and the frogs in the trees, and I'm
Yeah.
throwing bullets at a target that I
Yeah.
put out there, and I pick
Mhm.
up my brass. That's controlled.
Very much
I can
so.
do that.
And that's how it should be.
So you prefer obviously shooting out in the woods then.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
What helped you break that initial fear of firearms? Because obviously that is something that doesn't usually leave easily.
No, so it took a long time, and my husband and his level of patience with me in that area, and just being continually supportive and repetitive in his instruction and encouraging me to continue to go and to do it. You just you got to power through, because it's all about desensitization, where I had gotten to a point to where that had created a response in me that was over the top. I didn't like it. I felt out of control with myself. So I guess I just had to learn to take control of the situation as best as I could through just powering through, just force yourself to do that is making you uncomfortable.
Well, it's great that he could be there and be patient with you and try to help you out.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys don't do that shit, and it's really irritating to me. Especially we're not around. We're not a lot of times, especially for stay-at-home moms. That father figure, that dad person, he's not going to be there all the time to quote unquote protect, right?
Yeah.
If that's the image that we're as men are supposed to. Oh yeah, we're great protectors. We're great this, whatever. That's the ego usually speaking at the moment because we're not around.
Right.
We're not around. We're actually absent.
Yeah. Yeah. So Anthony's first encounter with firing a gun, my husband is that old school dad that is like largest caliber that we own is going to be the first one that you shoot so that you feel it in your shoulder. And then he tells them, now if the gun did that to your shoulder and brings you that pain there now, imagine what the other end would do to the person that you're pointing that at, because it's like times 1,000.
Yeah, powerful lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially to your shoulder.
Especially.
Depending on
Right? And he's like, no, not the shoulder.
Not the shoulder. Oh
Not right
no.
now.
Not right now. I've had a lot of different ways that firearms were explained to me. My first time shooting was at the Boy Scouts, which is a 22, and obviously that's a great place for a lot of people to start. As kids or not.
That's where I started
or not.
as well.
Or not. Like everybody has different approaches. Different coach, different approach. I love, my favorite approach is, okay, so we're going to start with an AR-15, because that's, what do we hear about the worst? AR-15's horrible thing. It's really this. It really is to us.
Gun.
It's the Jeep of guns for us.
The Jeep of guns.
The Jeep of guns. You can add the fat tires, build on it, whatever, or you can also customize it for people who aren't as comfortable with a heavy ass rifle.
Right.
And that's okay. They don't need to shoot 300 yards every time.
Yeah.
But they can, or they can shoot 10 yards. And hopefully you never have to use a firearm in a defensive standpoint. But an AR-15 is great for ladies. Home defense is absolutely amazing, especially if you have property. It is great for home defense.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations with multiple assailants who had firearms. And if I had my AR-15, I would be one less victim in the world. But I didn't believe in firearms, needing those at the time.
Yeah.
So now looking back in my future, it's going to be super important for me. So thank you for expressing how you dealt with firearms with your children as well.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be I don't know. I've never told my kid, hey, son, come on, daughter, we're going to go and be firearms owners now. I'm going to teach you responsibility stuff. I've had some trial runs with kids. I've had some trial runs with adults.
Yeah.
But there's really no book on how to really approach it.
No.
I've tried to gain a lot of perspective from other people. So thank you for that.
You are very welcome. You are definitely one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about firearms. Absolutely. 100%.
Sweet.
And then the way that you choose to approach educating people about firearms, I think, is also top notch. So
thank you so much.
for that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
I really looked at what I've been taught, and I said, you guys are horrible.
Right.
Let's do this differently. Obviously, there's a couple people I can say I really do a great job. Obviously, We the Female.
Yes.
She's a pillar of
phenomenal.
my future. That's going to be really important for all, especially for my lady friends.
Yeah, I would love to take Natalie.
Yeah,
one of her
Rhiannon was just talking about getting a gold gaggle of girls together.
We absolutely should, because Natalie is she's a bit fearful of shooting.
This lady, I've talked to a couple people from her class. I made it a point to stay after for like half an hour and talk to a couple people from her classes. It's gonna be a game changer for you, especially.
Well, and it's like what you said about seeing yourself in your child, the mirror, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, the only thing I can think of is that because Brian had the same approach with Natalie as he did with Anthony, it made her terrified of pulling the trigger.
Yeah, and it's important as men, especially, and it's not like a slap in the face to him or whatever, but it's important as men that we realize and recognize different things work for different people.
Especially the male to the female approach.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Where, like, Natalie's very much a tomboy.
Yeah.
You know? So I guess I could see why Brian would be like, oh, she'll do fine with the same. And then now she's, like,
everybody learns differently.
She just has a really hard time. Like, she is terrified to shoot the AR. But she would rather shoot a pistol, which to me, I'm like, I don't understand that. So I don't know what. I think there's definitely a lot of work there to be done.
We can, I would love to work with her. Of course, like, it's always free with my instructions, but we can also get her in a We the Female class. I really think that'd be great. Rhiannon's gonna put together a group of people, and I think you guys would love it. Her approach is spot on. I will I'll put together a whole group of people. But it's just definitely going to happen in the future. And I'd love to also work with Natalie, because different approaches are differently, like, for different people.
Yeah.
And I've gained perspective from it.
Yeah. About going shooting with you, and she was very excited.
Well, we can start. Obviously we start without the actual shooting. We do a dry fire, and then we go up usually, because the dry fire is when we build the confidence, and then and then we just do what we rehearse usually.
Right.
Yeah. We should definitely do it, man. Hell yeah.
We keep talking about it.
We you know what? And I have all this new time on my shoulder.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I got all this free time now, so why not? Well, I really do appreciate you coming on, opening up about the things you do not want to pass to your children, and things that you do pass is definitely going to be a huge thing. And I'm definitely gonna listen back to this one. I don't listen back to all of them, but I'm definitely gonna listen back to this one and take some notes, because obviously, other than the notes I've already taken, because it's really important for me to learn from people around me.
Yeah.
This is that whole takes a village to raise a child thing doesn't necessarily mean everybody be involved in a child's life.
It can also necessarily apply just to children.
Yeah.
Because we as individuals have a lot to learn from each other.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we definitely do. And I've learned a lot from you today. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for taking time out of your super busy schedule of being a super when I call them super parents. So you're one of the super parents. So thank you so much.
I don't know if I feel like I live up to that, but I'm
that's humility. That humility is important, and I commend you for it. Oh, well, this has been another lovely episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, make sure to share or just reach out to me and let me know what you think. We are meant to be conversation starters here at Off the Deep End. So if you're going through any mental health struggles, if you're a vet, don't know who to turn to, if you're looking to get into firearms, if you don't know what is in the future for you and you're just lost, please do reach out. Let's chat. There's no reason why you should feel alone in your journey. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Special shout out to my subscribers. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Much love, y'all.